Hi guys, I'm Linda.
I'm Vicky.
I'm Margie.
I'm Elder Keith.
And we are Partners in Crime.
Right on.
All right, so today we are going to dive into the LDS Church. And Keith has looked into this, trying to figure out where Lori and Chad and this whole group...
Well, how that informs them, really, is how their religious beliefs informs them.
Mm-hmm. So there you go.
And it totally intertwined with this, right? Totally intertwined with this whole thing.
And I had one question about, we talked about how they don't trust really the outside world. Everything's a conspiracy. They don't trust the government. They don't trust science. They don't trust anything except the church. Is that right?
Yeah, and they also believe that the end is near. We're in the end times. The latter days means that's what it means.
Well, they were wrong about the one date.
Yeah.
Well, there's a
Lori and Chad were wrong about that one. Well,
there's a list. I mean, there's a list a mile long of people that have predicted the end times. In fact, a lot of the when the LDS Church got started, Joseph Smith, it was during a time period where there were other groups very similar, which had similar. It was the Shakers. I wrote it down here. There was other church movements at that time that were coming out of this kind of end time scenario stuff.
Were they all in the same part of the country?
No,
or
I don't know if they were in different parts of the country. The Millerites, which became Seventh-day Adventists, they had end time scenario.
Okay.
They have multiple predictions of the end times.
Well, Christians have an end times as well when.
Absolutely.
So
there's
when Jesus comes, or
right on. It's totally intertwined.
Yeah.
It's Mormons consider themselves Christians. I mean, you can go on YouTube. There's an endless list of critics that would say that Mormons are a cult or Mormons are not Christians. I mean, right? And then you got to.
But who says Christians are right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church, so I'm not dissing anyone. I'm not dissing anyone or any religion. I'm just saying, who's to say who is right? So,
well, there you go.
Belief versus belief.
It's a belief versus belief, right? And that's yeah. I mean, the thing that I listened to also, the We Saw the Devil podcast. They had a 3-part segment, and they interviewed this woman that actually grew up a Mormon. And the angle they went is there was a recording of I think it's in October 2018 where Melanie Gibbs, Zulema, this guy named Thor, they're in this Mormon kind of prayer meeting, and it's recorded. Okay. And Lori claims that she is a personal eye. She personally witnessed Jesus Christ. She actually had she's actually experienced. Had experiences beyond the veil, beyond the the realm of our physical existence. That's part of the Mormon theology there, where she had a premortal life. She got to see it. She had visions, prophetic visions, and that's part of the Mormon belief. That was one of the things they covered in that podcast. We Saw the Devil.
And this was 2018. Zulema was there?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Okay, so
I believe
we did a previous video where we were talking about Zulema saying she didn't really know Lori, but if she's sitting down with her doing a podcast in 2018, she probably knew her a lot better than.
Well,
just wanted to put that out there.
The technology gets you.
Yeah. Sorry
and,
to interrupt.
That was the one thing that I would definitely love to hear if people see this, have this interest in it. This religious, psychological interest in the religious beliefs and how it informs both Chad and all the people in their circle. There's all these people in their circle that are being influenced by it, and there's the LDS Church itself that they have a mainline, I guess, they're conservative belief system, and then there's these kind of fringe
outreach
groups that are, they're still under the umbrella. And a lot of, like Chad, he wrote like 20 books, and they're all Mormon. In the books, there's Mormon characters that are the heroes, right? And it's all about the end times. And, I would definitely love, and this informs them. And so, if you believe that the world is coming to an end and you really believe it, it's going to change how you live and do things, right? And if you believe in demons and angels and spirits and how they are, and you believe that you can see this stuff, right? I mean, that's part of the thing that the kids were,
zombies.
They used the word zombies, but they were just like,
right, not that we see them as zombies. Not like
zombies is
dead zombies.
Yeah, but it's kind of like if you're operating in the spiritual realm and you're believing that, which that's what these guys did.
Yeah,
but these guys, you're talking about these
Chad and Lori.
The Fringe, though, not.
But Chad and Lori too.
Okay.
I mean,
what I'm saying
they had followers. They would go to these conferences.
Yeah, they did have followers.
And there was multiple groups. And right now, a lot of their websites got taken down. There's the preparing the people. Right? They take their stuff down.
Another voice of warning, maybe UW.
Yeah, Church of the Firstborn.
Yeah.
But
I think what Linda's
they believe that there are evil people walking around.
Yeah.
And being taken over by evil spirits.
Right.
And
now there's the core belief of the Mormons, core that they pretty much all follow. And then there's these splinter groups that their ideology is not the core value.
I would say it's not quite characterized in that way, because there are splinter groups.
Right.
But in the We Saw the Devil, they went line by line through that thing that Lori said, and generally most of it was like, yes, a Mormon would agree with what they said.
Got it. Okay.
It sounds splinter groupish, depending on where you're coming from, right? If you believe in the supernatural, you believe in supernatural things, you believe people rise from the dead, all that stuff. Well, I mean, what is splinter? What is fringe and what is not fringe? Within the Mormon religion itself, there are beliefs that non-Mormons would look at and say, "Oh, that's a little weird. That's out there, right?" Mm-hmm. But they overlap with Christian beliefs,
like
Jewish
angels
beliefs,
and demons,
devils. There's some, right?
Yeah.
What was the line by line thing that Lori said that they looked at?
Precept upon precept, line by line, precept upon precept. That's what they went through that. That tape that Lori was basically telling her story, telling her testimony. She was giving her testimony. She believed that she is like a warrior for God, and she has lived for thousands of years.
And they believe that.
The people in there believe that. Yes, they believe in a premortal life. Okay. Mormons believe it.
Okay.
There's a premortal life, and you get an assignment, and you're going to go to Earth and inhabit a body and do work, do something, do a thing, right? Mm-hmm. And Lori believed that she was able to.
She was one of them.
She believed she was one of them, but not only that, but she actually was able to, from this physical, she was able to go there and see it, and now realize it fully. So like a mystic, like a. She
actually saw beyond the veil. Yeah. I never knew that she thought that. I knew Chad did. But I didn't know that she also had experiences.
I mean, the only pieces that she basically, what I would judge it as I guess in the Catholic, it would be Catholic, had a mystical experience, like the saints, the saints had mystical experiences where some can't be explained. They actually, saw things that we don't see, saw God. Like Paul.
Or miracles have happened.
Jesus wasn't around. Paul, the story is, saw Jesus when he was on the road to Damascus, and he actually saw, and it changed his life.
Okay.
But it changed his life. Well, Joseph Smith, had multiple experiences like this, right, throughout his life and creating the LDS faith, and he's the leader of the church. He's the founder, and he's having these experiences. So I would say that they believe that all the leaders of church are prophets, and they have visions and prophetic visions, and they have gifts. But that's not just only confined to LDS. That's right everywhere, and you just go down this rabbit hole. But there are Mormon. There is a city called Colorado City that is. There's also splinter groups. The Mormon Church, just like the Christian Church. They had the Great Schism in about 1000, which the Eastern Orthodox, and then we had the Reformation with creating the Protestant churches. The Mormons also had schisms, and they have different splinter groups. There's Colorado City is dedicated to the traditional. They practice polygamy. That's that Jeffries guy, and they are hardcore, and you gotta have multiple wives if you want to get. In the Mormon belief, there's a hierarchy in the afterlife. There's there's your level 1, 2, 3, 10, so you become a god, and to get there, you got to have a lot of wives. I mean,
that's like buying all these books in Scientology. You have to get up the ladder to
there's a hierarchy.
Know the truth.
Yeah,
that's
right.
What it sounds like to me. I don't know anything about it.
It's very similar. I mean, I've been to the Scientologist church in California, and I studied, the life of what the heck's the guy's name? L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, Ron.
He was a science fiction writer, and but also, like I said, you can look at these things sympathetically, or you can look at them as a critic, and there's all kinds of videos of both, right? There's all kinds of YouTube videos and people discussing both. I really like the We Saw the Devil one because they were really kind of exploring it, not really showing their hand as just like a critic versus
Okay.
Just like with L. Ron Hubbard, if you go there, I went to the church, I asked them questions, they avoid certain things.
Right.
I'm sure it's the same. When you go to the LDS Church. There's a record. There's a legal record of Joseph Smith. He was involved. He was arrested like 40 times. He was arrested for an insurrection. He had a Mormon army, and he was going to take over this newspaper. He was because he didn't want them to write
what they were writing about him.
It was something like that. It was just like the Capitol thing. They basically, he was for treason and insurrection, but a mob came and killed him. He broke into where he was being held and killed him.
Killed who? Joseph Smith?
Joseph Smith was killed.
Oh, okay.
But then through the LDS lens, that becomes like a martyr story.
Yeah.
And so Lori could be, whatever her mental health is, obviously there's something going on here, but she believes. And so where does it go? Where do you draw the line of believer versus, now you went too far?
Well, it could
obviously, you kill people, you go too far.
Yes.
Her sister-in-law, which was Joseph Ryan's sister, had said,
Annie
Cushing, that at one point she had a discussion. She was visiting Lori. And Lori, she said, was a little off the wall at that time, and was talking about end of days. And she told her that it's going to be so terrible that she would drive her kids off a cliff.
Yes.
Before they would have to experience that.
Yeah.
So, could it be because they did believe in end of times?
Oh, Jim Jones, man. I mean, they thought that it's coming.
That she thought ending her kids' lives
would save them.
Would be a better experience for them than having to go through that.
Totally in game right there.
Yeah.
I believe that could have been her thought process.
Yeah.
She seemed to be 100% dedicated, and from my understanding, is she's reading the scriptures right now as we speak.
Although I do want to also say, yes, she was a true believer. I don't think there's anything that nobody says that isn't true, but she is a very manipulative person, and the things that she's done early on in most of the relationships that we've heard about, and even when she was married to Charles, she manipulated everything. She didn't like something. She had, and this is what Charles's ex-wife said, she had his son, because he had 2 sons before he married Lori. He had his one son sleep in Tylee's room, and then she went in and said that he was trying to molest Tylee. So she was a total manipulator.
Right.
This kid did nothing wrong. She set up the situation to make it look like this kid would have done something wrong, so she could hold something against this kid or against his mother.
Yeah, you get power. I mean, when you look at a person that, like you're describing, manipulative, and you weave in the religious piece, right? And now you got, well, I'm doing it because I'm on a mission for God. And it's like, well, that, right? It's very powerful.
Or she just is all about herself, and this feeds into that. I'm the powerful one. It's all for me. It's whatever I want, I get, regardless of how I am.
And she was good looking. I mean, she was
Well, she used that to her advantage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know?
Right? Definitely. I mean, that's the part of the psychological thing that I find very interesting, weaved in with the religious. And there's all the people around her. It wasn't like she was on an island doing this stuff and people were paying attention to her. Yeah. Chad had a following. Both of these guys, they have followings, right, in their belief systems. You know, I've experienced that myself. Going to, I used to play worship music, and I would go to places where they would be speaking in tongues and laying on hands and stuff. And it's like, well, that's not too far from what these guys are experiencing in their own way, right? Their own way of getting outside of.
Well, I think Charles had a thought process, and his not Charles.
Charles Vallow or Chad Daybell?
Chad Daybell. And his thought process had to do with biology.
For sure.
When it came to her,
he was only thinking with a certain part of his body. And he had a wife that he was
in there.
A wonderful woman. He was married
all these years, 5 children with. Here comes a beautiful blonde chippy who worships him in some way.
Yeah, she really validated his pathetic gifts and the things he saw himself as.
And this is what he deserves as being this higher being. This wonderful, beautiful woman that worships him. So
it lent itself to that.
And he also used that to his advantage by saying they were married before and previous.
Well, that's how he reeled her in.
Yeah, I mean, how much of that was?
Oh yeah, and you can imagine if you you can put yourself there, viewers. And just you weave in the chemistry, the male-female chemistry, the high, and then it's like, oh, I know we've been together forever. It's got to be a high, right? And it can, you weave all that stuff together. It can be a dangerous concoction. Well, I guess it can be a wonderful concoction too.
Both of those people, Chad and Lori, just from hearing the history and what we've learned, Chad, it was all about him and his beliefs and his writing these books and everything else. Tammy, unfortunately, had to help him get to where he needed to be. So it was all about what he wanted, what he was supposed to do with these books and everything else, and she kind of had to just be behind the scenes. This is what I'm getting, and had to be the backbone to all of this to get him where he wanted to go. Then you have Lori on the other hand. She did everything through manipulation, getting what she wanted, just doing whatever she could to get what she wanted because it was all for her. So I think you have these two people who are on the same, what's the word? What's the kind of people that they are?
Sociopaths.
Not sociopaths. They're narcissists.
Yeah.
So you have two narcissists that come together, and there's nothing but bad that can happen, because even though they're narcissists, she worshipped him, but she worshipped him because she was getting something from it. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily she worshipped him because she thought he was great. He was a higher being, so she could ride his coattails and be also elevated. Yeah, so it was a scenario for disaster from the beginning.
2018 thing, she was saying she was going to murder Vallow because of what she was going through, that she was...
He went to the police.
And she used to...
And said he was somebody else, it wasn't him.
And she backed it up with quote from the Book of Mormon that's... And, there's a religious backing for it. And it was like, it's hard to argue with it because the words do say...
You can do it.
Yeah.
But you can manipulate.
It was when Nephi killed Laban.
Religion.
Laban was this drunk guy in the street, and Nephi killed him because, I don't know the characters in the Book of Mormon, but it was kind of like a justification for murder. You can murder somebody if they're in your way, or they're screwed up, or they're messed up.
Yep. Yeah. So they use this to their benefit.
So how they interpret it.
Well,
but it's good. It's good to say, well, it's in here. This is what we believe.
The benefit is only of the story that they're living in their brain. Obviously, it didn't benefit them. It's not benefiting them now, but they had a story in their brain about the end of times. They're on a mission for God, right? All that.
And whatever I do is for a higher.
Well, it's to benefit that story, right? And right now, it's just like, the Mormon story. After Joseph Smith was killed, there was who was going to take over kind of thing, and there was some breakups there, and then BYU, Brigham Young, ended up taking over, and then they went out to Utah, which was actually not America yet; it was still Mexican, right? And he was basically like a Moses story, what I mean? I can see how it could be very powerfully enticing, because this is like, Mormons believe this is kind of like created the New Jerusalem in America, right? Mm-hmm. Jesus came to America, preached to the Indians, and basically Joseph Smith is kind of like the prophet that creates a new America. And now you got this whole Moses story of the people fleeing persecution, even though the persecution was like, they were practicing polygamy and stuff, and it was like a problem.
So they did it to themselves. Problems. Yeah. Where did this start? Where was Joseph Smith?
New York.
Oh.
He went from New York to Illinois to Missouri, and then from Missouri, that's where he was killed, and then they went out to Salt Lake City, Utah, which was kind of like nobody wanted it. Nobody cared about it so much.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I think I've told you this before, I'm going to start a religion.
Okay.
Anybody can.
And I'm going to call
Can you make me a high priest?
Yeah. You're all high priests.
Okay.
And priestesses.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it Vickyology.
There you go.
And I am going to have all these, what did you call it? Line by line.
Precept by precept. Precepts.
Precepts. That will benefit me.
Exactly.
But you could all, follow me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you need, like Scientology, $25,000 to join. You have to give me $25,000 each. So,
but if you want to be holy, that's the price. That's the price.
That's the price. I agree.
My take on all of this is, there are such good people that follow this stuff, and unfortunately, they are looked at differently, and it's a shame because they have good intentions. They are just about mankind, and they just want to help their fellow human beings.
I would say not necessarily though, because people get excommunicated. it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. I totally agree with you that there's a lot of good people.
Well, the people down here are the ones that are the good people doing the good work.
But there's people that have a high suicide rate. I mean, there's like a push for perfectionism somewhat. The people have, they don't accept homosexuality. There's a push for perfectionism in there, and then there is it wasn't until the 70s that, in the book, the black people are cursed. The people that, lose the war over here in America end up getting cursed with black skin. And up until 1978, black people could not be part of the
LDS Church?
Well, they couldn't be like priests. Everybody becomes a priest in the LDS Church. You're 12 years old, the males all become priests, and then they go on their 2-year mission, right? When they come over, but you couldn't be selected. You could not be a part of the priesthood until just 1978.
Okay.
Because if you have black skin or you were of African descent.
How about women?
Women
can never be a priest, even to this day.
Right. Women aren't allowed to have any. They have their own separate roles, but they're not allowed to be in charge. They're not allowed to be in the priesthood.
But how did Lori then attain to being a god?
Well, that's the thing. That was the thing when you listen to that podcast. We Saw the Devil. She claims that she was able to see that women are now becoming apostles. She was that was the thing that she was flipping things, right? And she's like a visionary now.
Oh yeah, because she's a woman, so
yeah. Well,
because of me, this is all changing.
Yeah, women are now in the priesthood, and what she was seeing as part of her prophetic vision that women were going to be in the priesthood and all and equal with men.
Right.
Which, right? That's what's happening in our world now too, right?
Right.
We got a women vice president now. That never happened before. We got 46 presidents, and we have the first female vice president that could potentially be president. So.
Yeah.
And Judaism. The at least in the Orthodox sector of Judaism, I remember when I was a kid, I had uncles that were very observant, and I would go with them. My parents weren't, but I would go with them to synagogue, and I would like to go because there was always wine and cookies at the end, and they were allowed. Children were allowed to have it, but the women had to be separate from the men in the synagogue. The women had to sit in the back. They had to have scarves on their heads. Almost like the Asian Middle Eastern had to get covered.
Burqas.
Well, they wear that, but they had to wear a scarf. And that's changed, of course, over the years because there's different movements in Judaism. There's
it wasn't
Orthodox. There's
women couldn't even have a checking account until like the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I turned up my eyebrows to that.
In the 1970s, women didn't have a checking account.
But yet, let me just step back. There aren't any Catholic women priests either, so. There you go.
There are.
It's everywhere.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Catholic, I do not believe, unless it was just recently that they did finally let a woman be a priest. I don't believe you can be a priest.
No, not the Catholic Church. Episcopal is a Protestant.
Yeah.
But they're very close.
I didn't know that.
The Episcopal liturgy is exactly like the Catholic liturgy. They're the closest ones to Catholic, but they are not Catholic. They're considered Protestant.
It's not odd. I don't know why I did that, because when I thought about it, I'm like, that's the same thing. And
yeah, we were talking about this the other day, and I was talking about, in my experiences growing up in like the non-denominational churches, women like never spoke, but then all of a sudden in the past, I would say like 7 or 8 years, now you have some of these churches where the pastors' wives are speaking. But like if you look at the course of a year with the male pastors and visiting pastors speaking, the women probably speak maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So it's still a very
we don't have any.
Yeah,
we don't have any speaking the what is it? They have the gospel reading, and then they have the sermon or whatever they call it. I'm probably gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, none
for
of the
that.
reading.
Yeah,
Homily.
that is not done. I've never seen a woman do that. It's only the priests that do that.
Yeah.
Well, in the Reformed part of Judaism,
Mm-hmm.
there are women rabbis.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've
I went
heard
to.
that.
I used
Yeah.
to go to Purim. I go to Purim at the church or the synagogue in Phoenixville, and it's a
Yeah.
well, there was.
Reformed.
I think it's different now,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there was a woman Purim.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
really interesting because I have a family member who is very observant, and I would think for her, she would lean more towards being Orthodox because of how strict she is with following some of the traditions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she is Reformed. She will not go to a synagogue unless it has a Reformed ideology.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know, and I just find that so interesting. With just kind of like a, you know, a
Well,
mixture.
well, because you're brought up with specific beliefs and everything, but then as you get older, and how things have changed, it opens your eyes to new things. You still feel comfortable with that,
Yeah.
you know,
You're used
that
to it,
custom.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
you know that it's
Why
not,
does it have to be that
everything's
way?
not
Well, when you
correct.
start
Yeah.
questioning it, that's when, you know, when you dive into Mormonism, and then this religion was started in 1840 or whatever. You know, so there's a lot of things that are well documented as opposed to the religions that were started 2,000
Right.
years ago or further, where, you know,
It's word of mouth.
I mean, the stuff that Joseph Smith was doing, and L. Ron Hubbard, that was, you know, like you can see how things get formed, right? You can see how, in here you can see how religion got formed, and then you have to dismiss the stuff that's questionable in order to just believe. If you question it, the whole thing falls apart and they got to kick you out. You can't have people,
Yeah.
can't build a church around everybody's questioning
You
things.
have to
Right.
have control.
You gotta believe some control. You got
Yeah.
to control the belief, and you got to believe in a thing, whatever it is, and then go from there. But you have to accept. So it gets when you start questioning things. I mean, you can't have a group and make. I mean, there was 3 wars. You know, the United States government went to war against the Mormons. Yeah, the Mormons had their own army. That's what the Mormons had their own army. Yeah.
When was this? What
When
year?
Utah, when they wanted to call it something different, but Brigham Young, there was 3 Mormon wars, and because they wanted to have control, and they wanted to continue practice polygamy. Brigham Young had 55 wives. I mean,
He was a busy
55.
boy.
Right?
How can you even get
Oh,
to know
that's
that?
a lot of in-laws.
How can you even get to know 55 people?
Where did
Let alone wives.
where did Mormon come from?
Mormon, the name Mormon?
Yes.
Mormon was the guy's name. It was one of the guy's names in the story of
Okay.
how he was one of the Nephite. There was the Nephites and the Lamanites, and they had a fight. And he was the guy that I think his son, or he was Moroni. Moroni was the angel that came to Joseph Smith. I think Mormon was the guy that buried the golden plates. The golden plates were the things that he translated and wrote this book from.
Got it.
He
Okay.
found them. There's no, we don't have any evidence.
What
of
was
it.
the first church called? Was it
It's
always the
different-
Church of Latter-day Saints? Because that's a new name,
Yeah,
isn't
I don't
it?
think it was.
No, I mean the Mormons was almost like they never really referred to themselves as Mormons. That kind of became a nickname for them.
Yeah, that's what we've heard. People
Their-
have commented on our
the
videos
original
saying
church-
that this is not their
I-
actual name.
Yeah, the original church name was not
The
the Latter-day Saints, but it was similar to it.
okay.
Yeah, I have to look at that.
That's okay. Yeah, I just didn't know because
but
we throw around Mormon and LDS, and
They're the
like I
same.
said, people have
They are the
said
same.
that they are not the Mormon Church. They are the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Right.
So we've been corrected. So I just wanted to know where Mormon came from and
the guy, there
what
was
the
a
original
character
name
named
was.
Mormon in the Book of Mormon.
okay.
He's the one that buried the plates, so that's why I guess they called it. Moroni is the angel that
Got
anyway,
it.
But
I'm looking up Malachite.
Okay. Malachite?
Malachite. Malachite stone.
Yeah. I mean, Joseph Smith, his family went through a bunch of hardships, and they were poor. They lost their land a couple times, and he ended up doing some things. It was a treasure hunt. He was a big fan of Captain Kidd, and so somebody found treasure of Captain Kidd somewhere, and then it just, there was this kind of rush to go around and look for buried treasure everywhere.
Got it.
Like that Oak Island, and it was a fad, and he had this stone that he called a seer stone, and he put it under his hat, and people hired him. Rich people with money were like, yeah, we're going to find treasure. They would hire him, and he would walk around there and be like, all right, dig here. They would dig. So a lot of times they wouldn't find stuff. He also, I don't know if you heard of the divining rods, where people would claim to find water.
Yeah.
Well, he would do that too, and so he was like, and he would, get in trouble at times because.
Was any
I don't know
based in
what you believe about divining rods, but I don't think they work. I used them. I had a friend of mine that thought they worked, and we were walking around, and I was like, anyway.
Did they move?
Maybe they did. You just didn't dig low enough.
We would,
deep enough.
We would be out in the parking lot, and there was a pipe. You could see where the drainage thing. He would walk over the pipe, and then he would. I was like, "You're making him do that." I was like, "There's no way." Because in your mind, the suggestion. It was just two metal rods bent like this.
Like a Ouija board?
Yeah,
but
like a Ouija board.
You're not supposed to move it. You're supposed to let them do it.
Exactly, like a Ouija board.
It's either a stick that's like a Y, like a wishbone stick, and people would. And people, a lot of people believed it. And sometimes people, for whatever reason, they either got lucky a lot, or they maybe had some sense, and they would, be okay.
Was he big into science? Because maybe he knew a lot about science and geology and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
No, I don't. I don't know about. But no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I just think he
was a shyster. He was a big talker that people believed.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of it. That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
And
to convince
I mean, there was one with the most well documented thing that you can see is that there were three. There's sort of the Mormons believe in the King James version of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine of Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. But then there were I think it's within one of these things. Oh, wait a minute. Where is it? Within one of these there's a book called the Book of Moses and the Book of Abraham, where at this time in the middle 1800s, people would have these little traveling shows, and they were bringing artifacts back from Egypt. Well, he got a hold of some of these, and he translated them, and that's what he wrote. And one of the things that he kind of slipped up on is he called some princess, some daughter of one of the pharaohs. Her name was Egyptitis or something, and that's how he said. But the whole problem is that Egypt was not known as Egypt. That's an English thing that was put on Egypt. It's like Germany,
Mesopotamia, or something like that.
No, it was called Kemet.
Okay.
Kemet. They didn't refer to Egypt as Egypt.
Right.
The people of Egypt would never have named the kid Egyptus because they didn't use Egypt. Right. It's just like Germany was the Romans. It was Deutschland, but the Romans called it Germany.
Okay.
That's how they got the name. They never. Yeah. But anyway, so they actually, these scrolls that he translated, they thought they were burned in his fire. It turns out they turned up somewhere. It also turns out that no one knew how to translate hieroglyphics at this time. He just looked at them and he wrote up stories about. There would be one letter and he would write a whole thing about what it meant. Turns out that they didn't have the Rosetta Stone then. Nobody knew hieroglyphics. But after they found the Rosetta Stone, they would go back and it's like, it was like a cookbook. I'm exaggerating,
right?
But it had nothing to do with what he said.
Okay.
It was some kind of burial ceremony that they found, that he found, and he created this whole story about Egypt, all these stories about Moses and Abraham and all these characters of the Bible, creates other stories around them. And it wasn't, well, to the Mormon, they're true. But, unless you, outside of that, actual, scientific and even archaeological evidence, none of this can be substantiated.
Right.
The easiest story is he made it up. But that just makes your faith all crumble, so you can't believe that.
Yeah.
And they got 150 years of, middle 1800s. They got 160-year-old history, and the Mormon Church is like the most powerful, richest. If it was a corporation, it would be like the most powerful corporation in the Western United States.
Well, more than Scientology?
Yeah, way more.
Wow.
They have land. They own land. Well, part of their faith
a long time,
is they have this really rich. These people work for free. They work for the church. They volunteer, and they have, also part of their surviving the end times. They have their storehouses. They just store stuff, and they have their own supermarkets, right? So they have they're very well integrated into business.
Okay.
And a lot of ways operating maybe tax free. A lot of stuff is tax free. They got a lot of, and so some of it is, you can look at it and be like, okay, people volunteering. Volunteering is a good thing, right? It's not hard to knock that. But the thing is they're very powerful. They're in, like every other. Not singling them out, but they're involved in politics. It's like just like the evangelical Christians are, and the Catholics are, and everybody else is, right?
Is, yeah.
They're all in politics and whatnot, and it influences them. I mean, one of the congressmen, that's currently a congressman from out that way. He actually has his own end times books that he writes.
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, his name. I looked him up.
Is he a Utah or Idaho?
Yeah, out in Utah there.
Okay.
He has his own, it's like doomsday prepping stuff.
Like Daybell's books.
Yep, just like Chris Stewart, Utah. It's called Great and Terrible, and in fact, Wrapped in Heavenly Fire. Anyway, Great and Terrible was a word that Lori used. She uses great and terrible in her description in that, and it kind of lends this another whole book line that she read, and like Chad Daybell's, where this whole end time thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're all fish in the same water. We got this human mind that needs to believe things, right?
I think we find that
we came from different kind of religious backgrounds, right? And brought in this thing, and so we're all experiencing this. So I would definitely like to hear.
Would it be worse to be a person that doesn't believe in anything as opposed to believing in something?
It seems like it's not possible.
But they believe in the world.
They believe in something.
They believe in nature and the world, and
that's a different. There are atheists. I have a friend, Lori, who is considers herself a
Wiccan.
Okay.
When you said nature and the world, and that's that belief.
Right.
That's that belief system.
Right.
But I don't think atheists, they believe in science. They don't believe in anything like that. They believe in evolution,
but they believe in mankind. They believe in
humanism.
Yes, they are not necessarily.
I don't think they're evil. I'm just saying that they believe in Neanderthal started humanity, and then they evolved.
The Big Bang and all that kind of stuff.
I guess.
Yeah.
But they're based on science. They don't.
But they believe in something. You know what I mean? There is a reason this is happening. So there's a belief there. To not know anything and not believe in anything, and you're just like throwing your hands up like, what the heck? You know what I'm trying to say?
You'll go crazy.
You need to have
ground
something
yourself
to
in some kind of
on.
belief.
Yes, yeah.
Well, when you get a chance, I've been playing with my phone here because I'm so interested in this malachite
Mm-hmm.
now because
The stone.
the stone, and there's an article, Malachite, the gemstone, its meaning, history, and uses.
Mm.
So they talk about the physical properties and the spiritual properties of it, the benefits of it. Transformation, psychosexual problems,
Oh, okay, get me some of that.
inhibition, rebirthing. Let's see where that fits into where.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why they
I'm
got
just
the
trying to
wedding
be funny.
bands with that stone in them.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm wondering, my thing was when they did the autopsy,
Mm-hmm.
did they look for things like this? Because I'm trying to see if it's poisonous.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
And well,
Do
they
some kind of
won't.
chemical test. They're going to do.
But they have to specifically target
Ask for it.
specific.
Oh.
They don't for.
There's just
Like
a standard
witchcraft
test
stuff.
that they do for things like
Yeah,
They're
they're
not gonna
only
look for
specific
moon
like
dust.
cyanide and all that kind of.
opiate.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not going to look for moon dust.
Right. They're not
No.
going to look for anything like
Just
that.
to make an
Well,
example.
like belladonna, isn't that a poison? Like they wouldn't specifically look for that.
Yeah.
You have to specifically ask for
Right.
a test.
Well, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, there's a lot of information in here about it, how it started, and healing properties. It has healing properties.
Well, I mean, one of the things too, just to get back to belief. I mean, I feel like we are experiencing it now more than ever because of the social media stuff and our connectivity, and how with the Trump and the election, right? And there's a whole group of people now that just think the world's going to end because Biden's president. We're all going to become communist slaves, transgendered. Who knows? You're all going to be neutered. I mean, there's people that think
Yeah.
the world is going
Yeah.
to end now, or the country's going to be just totally destroyed. And there was people, and I was kind of one of them a little bit, that I thought Trump was going to do something way worse than he did. So I'm glad he didn't. And
He still has
but
time.
but I'm just saying how the belief informs you, right?
Yeah.
And just like if Biden does a good thing or a bad thing, there's people that are going to believe
Right.
and nothing he can do is good. And not only that, there are all these news generating sites and YouTube videos. Whatever you believe, you can go and get 100 people, 100 confirmations of it, right? If
Yeah.
you believe the world is going to end and we are in the end times, you can go right now and see all these. I just saw a bunch of like Christian preachers that were Trump. He won. He got a lot, and they're predicting. Oh, in March this is good. Well, they started predicting back in December. And then they got to keep going because it doesn't.
It's not
Right.
fitting
The
your-
prediction doesn't work
their
out.
narrative,
No,
right.
it's going to be March now. March is something's